I was in the midst of a monogamous heteronormative relationship when I realized that I was bisexual. Not exactly the time that someone really wants to be exploring oneself, but that's how life goes. The realization hit me like a train going 100 miles an hour with no destination in mind. I was raised Roman Catholic, so as a young child, my thoughts were not about women. They were thinking about becoming a nun. And being into women was not a part of my grand plan. So I told maybe 1, 2 people, my partner at the time, and then I shut the door, closed the box, tried not to think about it. I didn't want to think about it because I was uncertain. I was uncertain about what this would mean for my future. I was uncertain how people would perceive me. And I had so many questions. Was I really into women? Was I sure? How did I know? I hadn't been with a woman yet. Could I have imagined it? Did I have to be equally attracted to men and women? I don't think I was. I didn't think I was. Were these feelings something that I could just ignore? How do I tell people? I realized that I was polyamorous shortly after myself coming out. No less of a surprise, but more of a disappointment. I already felt weird existing in the space of undefined lines around bisexuality. The words bisexual and polyamorous together, oof, that was a whole nother level. They felt elusive and gray. Identifying as these things together created a space where I felt like I existed between something and nothing, much and none, real and unreal. It was as though uttering those words together separated me even more from a world where I already felt like a stranger. The feeling around telling someone about who I truly thought I was can be equated to a ride on a roller coaster. Now, I have to tell you ahead of time, I don't really like roller coasters, and this one is no exception. You strap in at the bottom, feeling the excitement and joy and tension and fear and worry and excitement and joy all over again about being transparent and honest. A quality that I value to my very core. You know the rules and regulations about how to be and what to do and how to act, and yet you know you have to do something just a little bit different. The ride begins as you slowly build confidence about who to tell and when and how, and it has to happen. You know it inside of your very core that you need to tell. You climb higher as you feel nervous about the response and reaction, but the desire to be authentic to the you that you have begun to recognize as whole overrides. As you inch towards the top of the first drop, the words clinging to your tongue, as if in an attempt to be free. Slowly, ever so slowly, building until you reach the edge, and you're about to tell. And then you hear a voice of a loved one that stops you dead in your tracks. At least you're not gay. And the roller coaster retracts, and you rush back down to the ground, and you unstrap and you get out. I had to begin again, reshaping what it meant for my loved one to not understand these unclear lines of existence that I already felt so uncertain about. Hi, my name is Isbister, and I am a graduate student at East Tennessee State University. I am in my second year in the Master's of Communication and Storytelling Studies program. This piece, At Least You're Not Gay, breakdowns of communication regarding the liminal spaces of sexual identity, is an experimental autoethnography exploring the relationship between ever-changing identity, polyamory and bisexuality, and communication on the macro and micro levels. I want to say thank you in advance for taking the time to listen to my presentation today. Liminality, the state of being liminal. The best definition that I have found for this is liminality is a place in time and space where many live, but none can define. We all know it exists, but whether or not we choose to engage with the ideas within it determine how we begin to conceptualize our existence. For me, identity is liminal. I have gone through so many shifts and changes as I have explored who I am as a person. And me at 23 today has not found the final answer. The lines blur in existing in a bisexual space and a polyamorous space. Sometimes they intersect, and sometimes they exist far separately, but they continue to inform how I interact with people and how others interact with me. If we think regarding the theories of Butler and Foucault, once one starts to define the boundaries, the perceived lines begin to shift and change until they are undefinable again. So where my bisexuality begins and stops, and where my polyamory begins and stops, are elusive. I exist in this space. This is a space that defines many of my other identities throughout life. As I have begun to conceptualize bisexuality and polyamory and their intersections and what that means to me, I arrived upon the image of channels. Bisexuality exists as a channel, and polyamory exists as a channel. And they interweave and separate in different moments and times in my life. They connect when I'm having moments of defining who I am as a polyamorous person. And it's easier for me to define myself as bisexual because of the stereotypical norms expected that the best scenario when being polyamorous is to be bisexual or pan. It gives you the most options. One moment where it comes across as negative to be viewed as either is when I'm having conversations with people that I care about. And I try and keep the ideas as separate and small as possible. They still exist in the same channel of my identity, but they become a smaller portion of who I am, regardless of how I actually view this in my actual life. This affects how I communicate as such. In the example that I illustrated with my loved one, I was in a scenario where I was about to tell them that I was I had told them that I was polyamorous. And in this conversation, they had listened eagerly, with acceptance, I thought. But what really was a further categorization of what they could understand and choose to conceptualize. After I'd gone on this soliloquy to my loved one about being polyamorous and what it meant to love more than one person and how I felt more real, the only way my loved one could conceptualize what it means was to categorize what I could not be. My developing identity disrupted co-creation of expected scripts. When we think about the individual and society, they are both looking at the liminal space as a hectic place with constant negotiation and renegotiation. And often people who do not question their identity have no need to delve into the liminal space when we're thinking about queer narratives. There are often moments of power and disempowerment of gender, and one that comes to mind is the power to pass. In that moment with my loved one, they didn't know that I was bisexual, but the categorization of my identity as what it could not be, I had the power to pass in that moment. And that conversation and that ability to pass has affected how I communicate about being bisexual going forward. Communication exists for the purpose of creating a bridge of understanding between one reciprocator and another, not shutting the door. How does one who appears to be one way explain the unseen differences within themselves, that they in themselves are existing in the in-between? How does one explain that the hegemonic narrative of heteronormativity in relationships is not the end-all be-all? That conversation with my loved one has continued to inform my changing identity and has affected what I view as the person that I want to be seen as. Even the echo of a voice saying, "At least you're not gay," resonates as a reminder that communicating with others about identity creates hurdles that tangles clarity between narratives of self and outside perspectives. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I look forward to continuing to explore this idea and the discoveries that will come from this journey. Thank you again.